The ag economy is like a battleship. If it's going to turn, it takes time, space, and a reason. We'll talk this morning about if now is the time, if there is space, and if there is a reason for the ag economy to improve, and maybe more importantly, what might trigger that change.
Live from the jewel of the Midwest via Farm Journal Studios. Agri Talk. This morning we'll begin with a conversation with Arlan Suderman from StoneX. Then it's Dr. Scott Brown from the U of Missouri. I'm handsome newsman Davis Michelson. Now, the host of Agri Talk, Chip Flory.
It is not quite as rare as Halley's Comet. It's not quite as rare as a total eclipse of the sun.
Okay.
But every now and then we show up in the same place at the same time to prove that you and I are not the same person.
Now, here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
You've been out and all over the place. The last time I was on location was with Joe Stackler. Where were we in? Was that Kentucky? It was January of 22 is the last time that I was broadcasting from. That's right.
That we let you out? No kidding.
Murray State.
Wow.
Yes, Murray State. That's where it was. Murray State.
Murray State.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is very exciting for me.
Welcome. This is what it looks like on the outside world.
This is it, huh?
This is it.
It's not bad out here.
Nice.
I kind of like it.
Well, I think the world kind of likes you too.
Oh, stop. Stop.
Welcome to Agri Talk. I'm Chip Flory. That is Davis Michelson, and we are at the Farm Journal Breakthrough event. It's an industry event that it's first time, and it's an interesting group here, and we're going to pull some of the speakers, including today's guest, Scott Brown from the University of Missouri and Arlan Suderman from StoneX Group. They were talking about the ag economy and what it looks like going forward, and Farm Journal's monthly monitor of ag economists.
Sure.
So we've got a preview. Even before the information is published on agweb.com, we've got a preview of what this month's monthly monitor from the ag economist is telling us. So we've got a lot of ground that we need to cover today.
Absolutely. And I have no idea what to expect actually economically from that report. So to get an early look.
Yeah.
That's a good deal.
Yeah. And are things changing, and what might cause that change in a positive way for the ag economy going forward is something that we're going to spend a little time on today.
You bet.
All right, let's get to the news.
Well, I'm going to start with the National Weather Service weather. They're calling for a high risk, level 4 out of 4. High risk of excessive rainfall has been issued for portions of East Texas into western Louisiana today. For weeks, heavy rainfall has fallen across the Gulf Coast states, Chip, so any additional rainfall today will likely lead to life-threatening flash flooding. Severe storms capable of producing large hail, severe winds, and tornadoes will also be possible in central Texas. Look out.
The rain on the Gulf Coast has just been unbelievable, and it is going to create all kinds of problems again today.
Yep. On day 2 of the Wheat Quality Council's HRW Wheat Tour, scouts found an average yield of 42.4 bushels per acre. That's on samples taken from western and south central Kansas. Chip, that's up sharply from an average yield of 27.6 last year in the same areas.
Yeah, the 5-year average is closer to 40 bushels per acre. So this is still better than what they found on the 4-year average. And that average excludes 2020 because there was no tour in 20.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics shows the food price index was unchanged in April after increasing just 0.1 of 1 percentage point in March. The food away from home index rose 0.3 in April, as it did in March. The food at home index rose 1.1% during the past 12 months.
You know, this is something that you and I have been very, very much focused on over the past several months. And it's the affordability of that trip to the grocery store.
That's right.
And how that is going to change things going forward for the average consumer and how it's going to change what they're putting in their shopping cart.
Right.
It's it is something that it is having an impact on the average consumer out there right now. There's no question.
Indeed.
Yep.
Well, the U.S. consumer price data for April met market expectations, showing a decline in the rate of inflation compared to the first 3 months of 2024. This positive development was welcomed by the markets, with all 3 major stock indices reaching record highs yesterday.
Man.
Chip, Another barge crashes into a bridge, this time in Galveston, Texas, yesterday, spilling an unknown volume of vacuum gas oil into the water. The city of Galveston says the U.S. Coast Guard is responding and will determine the extent of the spill.
Dude, do not accuse me of having a tinfoil hat or of looking for black helicopters or any of that.
Okay.
But is this too coincidental that we've had two vessels run into very important arteries of trade and commerce in this country?
It seems a little conspicuous.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I straighten up out there, guys.
Yep.
If these are legitimate accidents, number one, straighten up. And if we're not looking into the conspiratorial side of this, we're not doing it right.
Yeah, you can't just dismiss it out of
Can't.
No.
Yeah.
In other news, Senators Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst, both of Iowa, led the state's delegation in calling on USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack to swiftly approve Iowa's request for federal assistance. Governor Kim Reynolds and Iowa Secretary of Ag Mike Nag made the request on behalf of farmers hit by severe storms and tornadoes last month.
Yeah, Western Iowa just got smoked last week, Minden area in particular. So there's need for some assistance.
Well, Chip, U.S. fuel makers rushed to refit their facilities to accommodate renewable diesel production. Reuters now says that rush has created an excess supply of the low-emissions biofuel that's shrinking refiner profit margins and threatening to slow or halt the development of what's still a very young industry.
A very young industry. As a matter of fact, it's an industry that's so young that it's struggling to find its balance. That's what we're looking at right now. The market is developing for the renewable diesel, but for right now, the supply's out in front of it.
Well, 25 trade associations representing producers, feedstock providers, blenders, consumers, and retailers of low-carbon biofuels sent a letter to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen asking the Treasury Department to finalize and publish guidance for the 45Z Clean Fuels Production Credit ASAP. The new credit is designed to incentivize domestic production of low-carbon fuels on a technology-neutral basis.
Producers right now are already thinking about setting the stage for the 2025 crop.
Yep.
When the 24 crop's going in the ground, they're thinking about the 25 crop as well. Those are decisions that could be influenced by some of the policies that need to be announced.
Yep. Well, Senate Ag Committee Chair Debbie Stabenow and Representative David Scott in a letter emphasized the commitment of House and Senate Democrats to passing a strong bipartisan farm bill that supports farm and family safety nets and invests in rural communities. Stabenow and Scott stressed the need for a bill that maintains the tradition of providing food assistance to vulnerable Americans while still supporting farmers facing the climate crisis.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like the way that this is developing at all because they don't need to say that the Republicans are trying to kill this bill or that the Democrats are trying to kill this bill. They don't like it. So they're calling partisanship out and instead of working together. It's ugly.
Just one more note here. Beijing is reportedly considering a proposal to have local governments buy millions of unsold homes to boost the slumping property sector. A vacation home in China might be cheap right now, buddy.
I guarantee. Well, honestly, I got a feeling that a vacation home in China is cheap most of the time.
I would think so.
At least it is in my book. I'm not spending that money. But anyway, we are in Kansas City. Davis and I are at the same table at the same time. And sitting right next to me is Arlen Studerman, Arlen's from StoneX Group. We're going to talk about the ag economy going forward next here on AgriTalk.
AgriTalk is brought to you by Atticus, providing battle-tested chemistries you know and trust.
That's really disappointing.
What's that?
It used to be when this bump music like this would play, I could look over at you and you'd be playing the drums, or you'd be dancing, moving to the beat.
I didn't bring my trumpet today.
There you are. You're just sitting there.
I'm just sitting here.
There's a piano around the corner.
I got to go. I'll see you in a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome back to AgriTalk. I'm Chip. That is Davis Michelson, and yes, we are actually together in the same place at the same time. For the first time in a long time. So And joining us right now is Arlen Suderman from StoneX Group. Arlen, how you doing, man?
You here?
Yeah, okay. Big Apple Joe. That's there you go. You got it. You got it. Big Apple. How are you, Arlen?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back with you, Chip.
Good. It's good to be back with you as well. I told you what we were going to start with, and here I am. I'm changing it up on you already because we're very close to Kansas. They're doing the Kansas Wheat Tour right now. I got to get your take on that, on what's happened through the first couple of days. What do you think?
Generally pretty good wheat in the northern day one of the tour across the northern part of the state. That was kind of expected. I think there were probably a few more problems than what I anticipated. The real problems were expected to be in the western and southern part of the state, and they did find problems there. But the tour average for day two was 42.4 bushels per acre. That was up over the 5-year average of 40.8.
Yeah.
But again, that 5-year average has last year's devastating yields in it, which was down around 27 bushels per acre. So I think the bottom line is we confirm there's a lot of problems in the southwestern plains stretching into eastern Colorado, Oklahoma, and Texas, but nothing really new.
Yeah.
We've got some disease problems. We've got more freeze damage than I think a lot of people thought out in that area. I think
and some mosaic is showing up out there.
Exactly right. So there's some problems. It's not really headline driving. The primary thing driving the headlines, and what I've discovered over the years is the U.S. wheat market trades Russian weather stories more than it does U.S. plains weather stories. And I think that'll continue to be the case. And that's probably the most intriguing story right now of all the supply and demand fundamental stories out there in the grain and oilseeds.
Yeah. You know, that's what it's like as the life of the supplier of last resort, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because the U.S. has the quality storage to store wheat, and we have the variable rate storage to pay to store it.
Yeah.
And so we become the residual supplier of the world. And as long as Russia is dumping cheap wheat at record pace onto the world market, the world is ignoring the fact that world stocks are continuing to decline. And of those stocks, over half of them are in China and will never be on the world market. But if you start curtailing that supply in Russia, and we think the pivotal level is about 85 million metric tons, then you start to change the dynamics of the wheat market. That has implications for the corn market as well. The last time we really did that was 2010. In 2010, we doubled the value of Chicago wheat in 5 weeks' time.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is some potential explosiveness in this market that we got to pay attention to. And if wheat can rally, then corn can rally. If corn can rally, beans can rally. It's kind of one builds off the other at this point, isn't it?
It really is. And again, I'd say if this was a year ago, the market would probably still be discounting it because we were in a commodity deflation period of time. But as we started warning our customers 6 months ago, expect by the second quarter, we'd move into a reinflation phase. And historically, the funds don't want to be short the commodities in reinflation phases. They want to be long. And so we've seen that flip happening here over the last several weeks. And some fundamental stories suddenly became their excuse to do so.
Yeah. So at the open of the show, I described the ag economy as a battleship, and it takes a long time to turn it. And there's got to be a reason for it to turn. It doesn't just turn. What you just said about an inflationary play in the commodities, that's part of the key ingredients, because it's not the only determining factor that's going to bring speculative money into the ag commodities, but it's got to be there or it's not going to happen.
Yeah, more and more we're seeing money flow drive the value of commodities in the short and the medium term. Now, I like your example of turning the ship around, and I want to warn people, we haven't totally turned this ship around. No. So we're in that risk phase. But I see us moving in that direction because I think there are structural things in our economy that will lead to continued reinflation pressures, causing the funds to want to own the hard assets. We're seeing it in land, but I think we're seeing it more and more in the commodities as well. And that, yes, it means inflation for input costs, but also for what we produce.
How does the basket of tariffs that the Biden administration announced on goods coming in from China, how does that influence the inflation ideas going forward?
It just adds to it.
Yeah.
The geopolitical risks means we're changing trading partners. So we're no longer trading with who's the most efficient to trade with. We're lengthening trade routes, but Panama Canal's been closed to grain trade. That should start reopening or in the months ahead as rains are now starting to fall again. But the Red Sea is basically closed for a lot of grain flow through there, taking longer routes. So we're seeing more expensive freight. Ships are on the water longer. The costs are going up. Who you do business with, all of that increases the cost and is inflationary. We're seeing it happen. We're seeing there. I could go on the list of things that are inflationary in the structure of our economy, and I see it still continuing trend in that direction. I do not see that changing anytime soon.
Right. Well, speaking of things that aren't going to change anytime soon, it's easy to draw the differences between President Biden and former President Trump on most political issues. But when it comes to trade, it seems like they're operating from the same playbook, Arlen.
Yeah, it really is. I was remembering the criticisms coming from President Biden when there was the Trump administration.
And it's different then.
Well, and there's something I was talking to my Chinese employees about as we talk about the cultural things and how it's perceived and stuff like that and what's going on in China. And the very fact that the Biden administration is now and we attended a conference not long ago by the IMF. I had a lot of East Coast elites at it from New York and Washington, and they were talking about there's zero difference in trade policy toward China now between Biden and Trump and how things have changed over the years. And what that says is the polls are supporting that. It's a politically advantageous stance to take, being anti-China, and China needs to take note of that. And I think they are taking note of that, except for they're not working to change. They're working to double down in the relationship with Russia. As Xi met with Putin today, he said, we have invested so much in this relationship. We have to keep going forward and nurturing it because we are the peacekeepers, basically, in the world. We're the ones bringing harmony to the world.
Yeah. So if we are going to look at this and say the Biden playbook on trade looks very similar to the Trump trade book, you got to look at what Trump did next, maybe anticipate what Biden is going to do next.
I think there's one big difference that I've learned from my Chinese employees, and I'm not trying to be political here, but this is an observation.
Okay.
Is Trump was very effective with Xi Jinping because of one thing. In the Chinese culture, you do business with who you have a relationship with. And you'll remember back that Trump put himself at risk at times in criticism from the media, saying Xi Jinping is my friend.
Yeah.
And he kept talking about Xi Jinping as his friend and about his family and stuff like that. And that resonates in the Chinese culture.
Right.
And he said Xi Jinping respects Trump because he knows what to expect out of him, and he respects that strength and that relationship.
Interesting.
And he doesn't know what to expect out of Biden, and so that causes him to react differently in a more risky way, so to speak, because he's always afraid of what the Biden administration might do next. He knows what to anticipate out of Trump, and therefore he does deals with him.
Well, what Trump did next was the MFPs, Market Facilitation Program payments, basically ruined the market into China. And it feels like China has got kind of a rolling set of retaliation against the U.S., the way they backed away from our soy complex, the way they backed away from corn, the way they bought and then canceled wheat. Could it be that the next thing on the ticket is some big payments coming from the Biden administration? It's an election year. I don't think we can rule it out.
Yeah, there's basically about $1 trillion available to the Treasury this year, and it's estimated by some that Janet Yellen will use about 3/4 of that between now and the election to help stimulate the economy. Agriculture might be able to get part of that if he feels like he can move the needle among the rural voters.
I think it's something that we're going to have to watch very, very closely going forward. Arlen, it's great to see you. Thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely my pleasure.
All right. That is Arlen Suderman with the Stone X Group. Coming up next, conversation with Scott Brown from the University of Missouri right here on AgriTalk. Welcome to another Soy Checkoff Check-In. I am AgriTalk host Chip Flory. Glad that you are with us. This week, we are talking with Catherine Drake Stowe. She serves as the director of the U.S. Soybean Research Collaborative, a multi-state soybean program dedicated to more effective coordination and collaboration among all the sectors in the soybean industry. Catherine, welcome to the Soy Checkoff Check-In.
Thanks, Chip. Excited to be here today.
You bet. Tell me about where you grew up and your farm background.
Yes, I grew up in eastern North Carolina on a small family farm, actually a tobacco farm. My parents still grow tobacco, cotton, beans. We live about an hour from there and get back to the farm as often as we can.
Excellent. You've got some experience with the Soybean Producers Association there in North Carolina, right?
I did. I started out once I graduated with the North Carolina Soybean Producers Association, and then about 2 years ago transitioned to this new role. I'm getting to work across all soybean associations.
Okay, so tell me about this partnership and how it all began with the U.S. Soybean Research Collaborative.
Yeah, so the U.S. Soybean Research Collaborative, or USERC as we call it, we love a good acronym in the soybean checkoff space. It's a checkoff-sponsored partnership with the purpose of really bringing more collaboration and coordination to soybean checkoff research. So USERC was formed in 2022, and it was really a grassroots effort by a number of state checkoff organizations to say, look, we know we have our own boards, we know we have our own budgets, we have our own research priorities, but there are many cases where those priorities and goals overlap. And where they do, we should be working together more effectively, not replacing any of the fantastic work that these groups are currently doing, but leveraging the current projects for broader impact and to reduce duplication.
Fantastic. We are talking with Catherine Drake Stowe, Director of the U.S. Soybean Research Collaborative, on this edition of the Soy Checkoff Check-In. Catherine, talk to me about the priorities there. What are the top 3 things that must be done to move soybean research forward?
Yeah, so as we think about moving soybean research forward, I think we have to think about this changing landscape that we're in. So we know that soybean production is changing. We know that farming is changing. We know the needs of our end users are changing. We've got to be focusing on these major soybean production challenges, which include things like using data, sustainability, weed management, nutrient efficiency, and more. So that's on the production research front. Another angle of this is improved communication across the value chain. And so really thinking about how we bridge this gap between supply and demand. Oftentimes our researchers are really in that box, whether that box is a field or the lab that they're working on, and don't necessarily think about how their research will impact other segments of the value chain. And so we have to help our folks that are on the production side of this equation really understand what the needs are in the marketplace, how to solve for those needs, and how their work as researchers impacts a grower's access to the marketplace. And then the third piece of this is this collaboration front. Today's questions are bigger. They require different teams of experts. Now, instead of like just weed scientists and agronomists, we got to bring in computer scientists and engineers and even sociologists and psychologists to be able to get these projects done. And so an improved sense of which organizations are funding what projects, what expertise, what researchers have in which states will really help us to better identify opportunities to leverage and extend the impact of our resources.
Catherine, real quick, tell me about some of the research projects that are happening right now.
Yes, there's so many exciting things happening in this space. I can't name them all, but I will name off, just a few that get me personally excited. So USB is funding a multi-state research project to really help us understand how cover crops suppress weeds. This includes using cameras on the spray rooms to help us measure that biomass. Iowa is partnering with an ag tech company where they have an early planted soybean trials that were planted with an autonomous fleet. Indiana has a project where they're exploring an autonomous see and spray rig. Recently, researchers in Missouri developed a new source of soybean cyst nematode resistance that has the chance to really be game-changing in terms of providing resistant sources to growers.
Awesome.
And the last example is USB is funding a project across over 15 states to look at nitrogen and carbon cycling within various production practices and to help us understand how we can increase our carbon intensity scores. And that's incredibly exciting.
Oh man, this is all very exciting. There's and very important work that's being done. No question about that. Hey, Catherine, where can listeners go to learn more about what is happening at the U.S. Soybean Research Collaborative?
Yeah, so you can learn more at Soybean Research Collab, COLLAB.com.
Excellent. Catherine, thank you for checking in with us on the Soy Checkoff Check-In.
Absolutely. It was fun talking to you.
Fantastic. That is Catherine Drake Stowe, the director of the U.S. Soybean Research Collaborative. Thank you for joining us. This has been the Soy Checkoff Check-In. Now, let's get back to AgriTalk.
Opinions expressed on AgriTalk do not necessarily reflect the views of Farm Journal Broadcasting, affiliate stations, or sponsors. If the world is your oyster, we've got pearls of wisdom on AgriTalk.
Welcome back to AgriTalk. I am Chip, and Davis is here as well.
I am.
Yeah. There you are.
I'm
right
looking
there.
You know what we haven't talked about enough this week is Class 3 milk.
No,
Maybe we
haven't.
should talk about that at some point today, if we can.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That sounds good. What's the market doing today?
We've kind of backed off from the high earlier this week, but currently around in the June contract, 20.88, just up 3. It's pulling back just a little bit on the day.
Yeah, $20 milk is it.
You hang a 20 on that, you got something.
It's a whole lot better than 16.
Yes,
That's
sir.
for sure. That is for sure. All right. Welcome back. We're talking about change in the ag economy and what might be driving that change. And joining us to continue the conversation, Scott Brown from the University of Missouri. How you doing, Scott?
I'm doing good, Chip. Good to see you in person.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Each month, Farm Journal and the University of Missouri work together to do a survey of ag economists. About 70 are included in this survey to kind of take their temperature of what they see happening in the ag economy going forward. You were up late last night working on the latest survey results. I haven't seen any of it yet, Scott. What did you learn?
Well, I think number one, when you look at just kind of the outlook for farm income or crop prices, livestock prices, generally a lot of sideways from what we saw back in April with this May survey. In some cases, a little more optimism, other cases, more pessimism, but generally, I keep saying sideways here.
Okay, sideways, but there is a slight downward bias from where we were a year ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely correct. I'm thinking about just month to month, what are we saying? But when you look at the long term, and we ask the economists where things stand generally today relative to 12 months ago, most of them will answer at least slightly worse off.
Right.
And I think that comes off of the highs that we would have seen back in 2022, Chip.
Right.
It's not surprising that we're answering that. Maybe a little more concerning is that when you ask them about the next 12 months, we still get more answering slightly worse off than slightly better off, which just tells me we're continuing to move to what's going to be tighter margins as we look ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. What is out there that has the potential to change the direction of the ag economy? Does it have to come from the commodity markets? What is it?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things here that I always like to talk about. Number one is demand generally.
Yeah.
What are we doing with the general economy? What's consumers' behavior? How's it going to change? Because I think we look back at 2022, and for things like hogs and cattle, demand was incredibly good. I think consumers had a lot of money in their pockets, willing to spend on meat products in particular. You look today, and there's some signs of concern when you think about credit card debt, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so I worry about what that means. I think that's, number one. And I'll keep saying weather matters.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of rain in some parts of the country, at least at this point. I think that helps potentially forage supplies recover on the cattle side. So maybe we think about expansion in some states. At the same time, dry weather later this summer puts a smaller crop in the bin and maybe gives us even more optimism in corn and soybean prices.
Yeah. You and I have talked about this before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. Yes, weather matters. Pasture conditions matter on expanding that beef herd, but we also have to make that female more profitable in the pasture than she is in the feed yard. I don't think we've done that yet, have we?
Boy, when you look at where cow prices are, there's some opportunities to let that cow go to market. And I think we're seeing operations who are making that choice of, they're worth too much to go into the feed yard right now. That I think will eventually change, Chip, but I'm not sure we're there yet.
Right.
I still think we have some folks who are saying, I don't want to expand until I have some forage supplies built back.
Right.
It's one thing to have a better start, but we really haven't built back those forage supplies.
Exactly. That I think is exactly part of it. But also what needs to happen is we need to crush demand at some point. And it's unbelievable the way that box beef market has popped back this week. We've not crushed demand.
No. And it's, in the old days, we would have corrected demand at this point
by now.
And all right. So I will say, as the economist, I think demand for beef is very inelastic with respect to beef prices.
Jeez.
Consumers want beef. The cattle industry should pat itself on the back for creating, I think, its niche of, hey, if I want to go have a really good product, what am I going to go have? I'm going to go put steak on that plate.
Yep.
And I think that has served this industry well.
It's the steak is the celebration. The steak or prime rib is the celebration, but hamburger is your everyday.
Yes.
So pat yourself on the back twice, beef industry.
Yes. It is amazing that we haven't seen hardly any demand cutback, which I will keep saying, don't be surprised for that day to happen. Consumers change, but the investment in better genetics, higher quality beef, a more consistent eating experience, all of the things that we did from very bad demand of the early 90s is paying dividends today, I believe.
Man, I think back to what we were doing in the 80s with the lean beef and all that. And you want to talk about a battleship that was moving in the wrong direction. That was the beef industry. And it's good to see what can happen when we've got everything going in the right direction. What else did you learn from the survey?
Well, I think one of the areas this month was a lot of discussion about how do you work on the expense side of the equation for crop producers who likely are going to talk about tighter margins as we look ahead. What are the changes you can do on the expense side? So we were polling economists. What do you think is going to happen? Number one, I'll say one of the things that came back, we asked them a number of categories. One was, do you purchase lower price seed? Mm-hmm. We got very few answering yes to that question. Most would say no change. I think this is the point to be made about, hey, I want to cut costs where I can, but I also don't want to increase the risk.
Right.
And I want to make sure that I'm using the best combination of inputs to maximize revenue, to reduce the risk of short crops. So seed wasn't at the top of the list.
Yeah.
Not purchasing machinery was really at the top of the list. And that's probably not surprising that we get that answer. Shopping for lower operating interest was another one that got on the list of likelies. In terms of industries of concern, the economist said it's the machinery industry that's going to have to look carefully at what 2025
there's going to be some great opportunities on the machinery side. I think we're starting to see. I talk every Monday morning with Greg Peterson, Machinery Pete, and he has pointed out the recalibration of the high horsepower tractors in particular, how things are starting to step down, and he's got real numbers from a year ago right now to where we're at today. And there is a setback. I don't know if we factored all of that in. Based on what I'm hearing here, it sounds like there could be some better buying opportunities ahead of us.
Yeah. So I think you're right, Chip. So it's going to depend on operation by operation, right?
Yep.
So I think you can withhold some machinery purchases for a period of time, but not forever. The technology that comes with some of the newer machinery purchases are going to be needed.
Yeah.
This is always how do I maximize revenue? And you can skimp maybe for a period of time, but not forever. And machinery is maybe one where you can go longer, but you're going to have to make some changes at some point.
Okay. Not backing off on seed or changing their seed ideas. What about fertilizer? Is there looking at doing things? I don't know, more, they shouldn't You shouldn't be looking to do things more efficiently with fertilizer. You should have gotten there by now.
So I think it's only those operations that maybe haven't used the most latest technology that may say, yes, I can cut back on fertilizer. Now, if I've been really good at my fertility program, maybe for 1 year I can back away from that fertility program, but you can't do it for multiple years. No way.
Yeah, you're looking for meat on that bone, and there's not a lot to trim off anymore.
So I think it comes down to, am I using the most recent technology?
Yeah.
That allows me to minimize that fertilizer application. And if not, maybe that's an investment I want to make. Yeah. I may spend money on that technology to reduce that fertilizer cost.
Yep. Yeah. The bottom line of that whole conversation, though, I think, is you cannot sell or generate revenue from a bushel that you don't produce. So don't back away on your production.
And the risk of that production as well, I think, is important. So don't be doing things that all of a sudden increases the risk of a 10% reduction in yield. Those things don't help at the end of the day. Right. So you have to be really careful. And I always say, I don't like this discussion, Chip. It's where we need producers to be focused on, how do I do this more efficiently? That's not so much fun.
Right.
But I think that's maybe where we're headed if these prices for the outputs keep going where they are.
Yeah. And which leads us to another conversation that typically isn't a whole lot of fun when you get the producers involved, and that is marketing. Got to do a better job of marketing in many cases.
And I will say, I do believe there's going to be opportunities.
Yeah.
These markets are a lot more volatile today.
Yeah.
I think that's not going away. And so being able to take advantage and being positioned to watch those markets and know, hey, I'm going to go sell. And maybe I'm going to sell 5% or 10% of what I think my expected production is for this year. Being able to pull that trigger, that's going to be much more important.
I've only got about 30 seconds left. Can the ag economy be in better condition 12 months from now than it is right now?
It can. I think it all hinges on domestic demand and international demand for many of our commodities.
Coming back to the demand side, you started there and went right back to it at the end, Scott.
That's right, Chip.
Yeah.
It's all about the demand side.
I'm a demand guy as well. I'm always looking for ways that we can stay focused on getting paid for product rather than not producing or having a production issue. Good stuff, man. Thank you.
You bet, Chip. Thanks.
All right. Scott Brown from the University of Missouri. Davis and I will be back to wrap up this morning's AgriTalk next.
We don't make the news, we render it. AgriTalk. And welcome back to AgriTalk, everybody. Your pal, Davis Michaelson here with Chip Flory in the flesh.
There you are.
And you know what? You mentioned it earlier. We don't get to broadcast together outside very much, out in the world. It's not just you and me, though. We got Big Apple Joe sitting right here, too.
He's here, too.
The three Agmigos are in the house.
Are you making up words again?
You like that? You like that?
Actually, yeah, I hate it when we make up words.
Sure.
Okay,
yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah.
But Agmigos,
that one's not bad.
I think I can go with that.
It'll grow on you.
Yeah.
Dude, great to be here in Kansas City with you guys and all the good folks here at the event. Yeah. Arlan Suderman, that was really interesting what he was talking about, how let's not get too political and weird here. Let's just look at this pragmatically. But when you see the Biden administration begin to adopt policies that sort of rhyme with the way that Trump dealt with China, and maybe more than sort of rhyme.
Yeah.
That's an interesting development there.
It is more than sort of rhyme. And when you look at that trade policy, when Biden made the announcements on Tuesday of the tariffs, did it very early in the morning, by the way. He did it for China as much as he did it for the U.S. But it immediately generated the one-upsmanship with former President Trump. He says, "Oh, you're gonna tariff those EVs at 100%. If I'm in there, it's going to be 200%."
Yeah.
You know, it's higher costs for consumers, Period. End of story.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I kind of directed that conversation with Arlen over back to his inflation comments, because tariffs and policies and fiscal policy, not monetary policy, has an impact as well. But fiscal policy, stuff that comes from Congress and from the White House,
Right.
definitely has an impact on the overall inflationary tones in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And the more money you dump into it, the more inflation there's going to be.
Yeah.
So every time I hear this, well, number one, Biden is just lying when it comes to, I stepped in and we had a 9% inflation rate when I took over as president. Just stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did he tell the lie, he was told that he was lying. He came back and he did it again.
Yes.
So stop with this. The deceptions that are being thrown around by everybody in Washington, D.C. has left the voters frustrated.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and this kind of one-upsmanship between the two candidates, I don't care who you're supporting in this election. This is bad for the consumer.
Oh, it's really bad.
And all they're trying to do is improve their own positions in the consumer's eyes. What are we doing?
But
I don't get it.
But we are going to get a debate. We're going to get two debates.
We're going to get two. Yes.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
How about that?
I am very surprised. Now, it's outside, as I understand. I don't really get this stuff, but as it's outside of the usual, there's a national debate, I don't know, people who set up the presidential debates.
Yeah.
But this is through news outlets rather than the debate people, right?
Well, maybe the Biden administration had to push forward because they wanted to make sure that they had a favorable atmosphere in which for this debate to take place. Here's what surprises me.
Yeah.
Neither one of them will be the official candidate of either party when the first debate takes place.
Yeah.
These are happening before the conventions. The second debate, the second and final debate, is going to take place earlier, earlier than the first debates in the previous election cycles.
Okay.
So the debates are going to be done before the debates usually get started.
Right.
It's one of the strangest setups, agreements that I've ever seen. And
I can't get a straight. I can't find a straight answer on whether President Biden will run again. Is this maybe sort of a testing ground for him they're going to trot him out, see if he can still do the thing, and if he passes this test? But I don't know. It's getting late, it's getting late.
I think so too. Now, Big Apple's got an opinion on this. I know he does. What do you got?
I'm amazed like you guys are. I've never heard of a situation like this. I think I love the way you said it. Neither of these guys are going to be the nominee of the party come the actual conventions, to say nothing about the election itself.
Yeah.
Which is, and that's what, 5 months away?
Yeah.
6 months away?
Yeah.
5.5 months away, something like that.
Right in there.
What a crazy year we still have ahead of us. Everybody talks about, if the election were held today, what a meaningless poll that is, because so much to go. There's still 2 or 3 October surprises.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, and that is what has brought me around to comparing the Trump trade policies to the Biden trade policies.
Mm-hmm.
And if the what has happened so far looks familiar or rhymes with what we saw from the Trump administration, next on the list are some big time direct payments to farmers.
Yep.
You know, all they're going to have to do is show the net farm income chart and put it all over the news, and then say, you know what? And I'm doing some things to protect manufacturers here in the United States that's actually hurting our farmers. So we're going to have to come with some payment. That is not a prediction. I am not predicting it.
No, but Suderman said there is money there for these sorts of things.
Hey, They don't care if the money's there or not.
No, they don't.
They're going to spend it whether it's there or not. So that's the other thing that kind of makes me think more confidently that there could be some sort of a direct payment on the not so distant horizon. I don't know. We'll see. I do know this.
Yes.
I do know that this afternoon we are going to be talking about Unscripted with Tyne Morgan and Clinton Griffith from Farm Journal.
I have my script here for that right here. Actually.
Yeah. And Greg McBride from Allendale will be our guest analyst this afternoon on AgriTalk.